My ex's new wife stole my seat at my son's graduation and told me to stand in back. Then my son took the stage, pointed at her, and exposed a secret that turned her face white. The first thing I noticed wasn't the missing seat. It was the laugh. God, that stupid laugh. You ever hear somebody laugh and instantly know they're the kind of person who returns a borrowed casserole dish empty? The kind who says sending love under Facebook tragedy posts, and then immediately screenshots the comments for group chats? That laugh. Light. Pretty. Sharp enough to cut skin. I was standing in the middle aisle of Lincoln High's auditorium, holding a folded graduation programmed so tightly the paper had started to wrinkle under my fingers. And there she was, Chloe, 28 years old, my ex-husband's newest wife, sitting in my seat, my damn seat. Actually, no, not just my seat. The seat my son had saved for me. There's a difference. A huge difference. One is furniture. The other is respect. And apparently respect was on clearance this morning because everybody was acting broke. I stood there staring. David sat beside her. Of course he did. My ex had spent 20 years perfecting the art of pretending bad things weren't happening directly in front of his face. Meteor strike? Ignore it. House on fire? Ignore it. New wife humiliating the mother of your child? Apparently also ignore it. Man was basically an emotional possum. If he stayed still enough, maybe accountability wouldn't see him. I swear. Some people age into wisdom. David aged into wallpaper. The torn name card sat underneath the row, half visible, half hidden, like evidence at a crime scene, and immediately my stomach dropped. Because Michael had written those cards himself. I knew his handwriting, the neat blue block letters, the careful spacing, the same handwriting that used to fill math, notebooks and science fair boards and birthday cards that always somehow made me cry. Not because they were emotional, because he never forgot details. The kid remembered everything, which honestly should have terrified Chloe more than it did. But narcissists always think they're the smartest person in the room. That's their weakness. They think everyone else is an NPC. Then reality punches them in the throat. Unfortunately, reality was running late today, so there I stood, watching her smile, watching David avoid eye contact, watching 18 years of sacrifice get shoved into the back of an auditorium like expired milk. Cute. Real cute? I felt Claire beside me vibrating with rage, actually vibrating. Like if somebody plugged her into a wall outlet, she'd power the building. My sister has always been that way. She's 5'3", looks harmless, kindergarten teacher energy. But inside she is 75% caffeine and 25% felony. She leaned close. I could practically hear her grinding her teeth. I won't repeat the exact things she whispered, because honestly half of them sounded legally actionable, but the general theme was murder, creative murder, artistic murder, murder with vision. And honestly, a tiny part of me appreciated the support. Then Brandon appeared. Poor Brandon. 19 years old, clip-on bow tie, face pale enough to qualify as office paper. He wouldn't look at me, which told me everything, because innocent people make eye contact. Guilty people suddenly become fascinated by floor tiles. He pointed toward the back, said I'd need to stand there. And that's when Chloe looked directly at me, not past me, not around me, at me. Then she smiled, slowly. God. I hated that smile, not because it was cruel. Cruel is honest. Cruel tells you exactly what it is. That smile was worse. It was smug. Smug people are exhausting. They hurt you and then act like they're doing community service. Then came the wink. The actual wink? I almost laughed. Seriously? Because who does that? Who winks? What was this? A Disney Channel villain audition? Did she twirl a mustache in the parking lot too? Maybe tie somebody to railroad tracks after lunch? The woman was ridiculous. Dangerous. Mean, but ridiculous. And somehow that made me even angrier, because after 18 years of raising Michael, 18 years of double shifts, 18 years of unpaid bills, 18 years of wondering if I could stretch groceries 4 more days, I wasn't getting humiliated by somebody who treated Instagram captions like a personality. Absolutely not. So I walked. Not because I wanted to, because Michael mattered more. Every step toward the exit sign felt heavier. The red light buzzed overhead. The wall felt cold against my back. And suddenly I was remembering things. Not graduation. Not today. Everything. The apartment above the Vietnamese restaurant. The broken heater. The nights Michael pretended not to notice me eating less so he could eat more. Kids always know. Parents think they're hiding things. We're not. We're terrible liars. Michael knew. He always knew. I remembered him at 9, reading library books under blankets with a flashlight. At 12, building robots from thrift store electronics. At 15, falling asleep at the kitchen table surrounded by calculus homework. At 17, working himself sick applying for scholarships because he knew I couldn't afford college. Every memory stacked itself inside my chest, one after another, like bricks, heavy, solid, impossible to ignore. And then something hit me. A weird thought, a stupid thought, the kind that appears during emotional disasters. What if this was the last time anyone ever underestimated Michael? Seriously, think about it. Everybody underestimated him. Teachers, classmates, his father, Chloe. Everybody saw a quiet kid, a polite kid, a smart kid. Nobody looked deeper. Nobody noticed the steel underneath. Because quiet people scare me. Not loud people. Quiet people. Loud people tell you exactly what they're planning. Quiet people smile while building catapults. Michael had always been quiet. And standing under that red exit sign, watching Chloe film herself, watching David clap for a future he hadn't helped build, I suddenly got the strangest feeling. Like something was about to happen. Not hope. Not revenge. Something else. The feeling you get right before a thunderstorm. The air changes. The pressure shifts. Your skin notices before your brain does. I looked toward the stage. Rows and rows of students sat waiting. Blue gowns, gold cords, excited families, camera flashes, the usual graduation circus. Then I spotted Michael, 3 rows from the front, straight-backed, still, focused. And that's when he looked at me, just for a second, across the entire auditorium, past hundreds of people, past teachers and parents and decorations, straight at me. His expression never changed. No smile, no panic. Nothing. But something in his eyes made my stomach flip, because I knew that look. I had seen it exactly twice before. Once when he caught a kid cheating during a robotics competition, and once when he realized a teacher had incorrectly graded an exam. That look meant one thing. Michael knew something. And whoever thought they were winning wasn't. Not even close. People think betrayal is dramatic. It's not. That's the scam. Real betrayal is paperwork. Real betrayal is receipts. Real betrayal is opening your mailbox on a Tuesday and finding another problem with your name on it. The auditorium was filling up. Parents were taking pictures. Kids were fixing graduation caps. Somebody's grandmother was already crying and the ceremony hadn't even started. Meanwhile, I was standing under an exit sign having an accidental flashback tour of every dumb thing Chloe had pulled over the previous 2 years. And suddenly something clicked. You know those moments when your brain finally organizes a pile of chaos? Like dumping an entire junk drawer on a table and realizing all the batteries belong together. That? Because for 2 years, I'd treated every incident separately. The missing messages, the school confusion, the social media nonsense, the weird scheduling mistakes, the random little cuts, death by 1,000 paper cut. But standing there, I realized something. Nothing had ever been random. Not once. Everything had been deliberate. Every single thing, which honestly should have impressed me. Not morally, psychologically. The amount of energy required to obsess over somebody else's life that much? Exhausting. Girl, get a hobby. Learn pottery. Start knitting. Join a cult. Normal people spend weekends watching Netflix. This woman apparently spent hers running a low-budget espionage operation against a middle-aged clinic worker. What a weird use of time. I could barely remember to buy dishwasher detergent. Meanwhile, Chloe was apparently plotting social warfare like she worked for the CIA. A deeply annoying CIA. The kind sponsored by protein powder. I looked down at my phone. No new messages. Nothing from Michael. Nothing from Claire's husband asking for updates. Nothing from anybody. And for some reason, that made me smile. Because Michael wasn't texting. Michael was busy. Whenever Michael got quiet, things happened. Not bad things. Strategic things. The kid planned everything. When he was 10 years old, he spent 3 weeks creating a presentation explaining why we should adopt a cat. A presentation. With charts. The cat won. I lost. The cat's name was Newton. Newton spent 14 years judging me from countertops. Honestly, the cat and Chloe would have hated each other. Too similar. Both liked knocking things over and acting innocent afterward. The memory almost made me laugh. Almost. Then I spotted movement near the side entrance. Janet Morales. Walking into the auditorium, and suddenly my pulse kicked up. Because Janet never attended school events. Janet attended legal disasters. The woman could smell liability from 3 zip codes away, 58 years old. Always carrying a leather folder, always moving with purpose. Like every hallway was a courtroom. She spotted me immediately. Of course she did. Janet noticed everything. I once changed shampoo and she somehow knew. No idea how. Witchcraft probably. Legal witchcraft. The most expensive kind. She didn't wave, didn't smile, just gave me a tiny nod. And that was enough. Because suddenly I knew the folder was here. The folder. God. The folder. The thing had become legendary. What started as a few notes had evolved into a monster. Every screenshot, every email, every weird incident, every documented interference, everything organized, dated, indexed, cross-referenced. The thing probably had its own ecosystem by now. If you dropped it in a forest, smaller folders would evolve from it. Janet called it documentation. Claire called it ammunition. I called it insurance. Because that's what experience teaches you. People lie. Paper doesn't. People rewrite history. Screenshots don't. People gaslight. Receipts just sit there existing, unbothered, moisturized, thriving. And apparently that folder had gotten bigger recently. Much bigger. Janet hadn't told me details, only that she'd found something interesting. Whenever attorneys say interesting, run. Normal humans use interesting for vacation stories. Attorneys use interesting for incoming catastrophe. I watched Janet take a seat near the side aisle. Close enough to observe. Far enough to stay invisible. Classic Janet. Then I looked toward row B again. Big mistake. Because David was smiling. Actually smiling. Like today belonged to him. And suddenly I got irritated all over again. Not angry. Past angry. You know that stage after anger? The exhausted version? The one where you just stare at somebody and think, wow, you've learned absolutely nothing. That's where I was. Because David genuinely believed he deserved credit for Michael. That's the crazy part. Not publicly. Internally, he believed it. He thought occasional attendance counted the same as daily sacrifice. Like fatherhood was a rewards program. Show up twice. Collect points. Receive successful adult child. Congratulations. That's not how this works. That's not how any of this works. I knew who taught Michael fractions. Me. I knew who sat through fevers. Me. I knew who drove through snowstorms for competitions. Me. I knew who stayed awake during panic attacks over college applications. Me. Not because I wanted a trophy, because that's what parents do. At least the ones who actually show up. And suddenly I remembered something ridiculous. One winter, Michael was 11. The apartment heater died. Completely dead. Middle of January, freezing. The landlord disappeared for 3 days. Because of course he did. Landlords always vanish when responsibility appears. It's like summoning Beetlejuice in reverse. So Michael and I built a blanket fort in the living room, dragged every blanket we owned into one giant pile, ate canned soup, played board games, games, pretended it was an adventure, and for years afterward, Michael called it Fort Winter, one of his favorite memories. Meanwhile, I spent that entire week terrified, worried, stressed, calculating bills, trying not to panic. Funny how that works. Kids remember magic. Parents remember survival. I looked around the auditorium. All these families, all these cameras, all these proud faces. And it hit me. Nobody in this room knew the real story behind anybody else. Not really. Everybody looked polished today. Nobody saw the years underneath, the night shifts, the divorces, the debt, the loneliness, the sacrifices. Life is weird like that. Graduation lasts 2 hours. The journey takes 18 years. And somehow the 2-hour part gets all the photographs. Then the lights dimmed. A ripple moved through the crowd. The ceremony was starting. Finally. Thank God. Because if I had another 10 minutes alone with my thoughts, I was probably going to start a fist fight with destiny itself. Music started. Students stood. Parents lifted phones. The giant graduation machine began rolling forward. And as everyone focused on the stage, I noticed something strange. Michael wasn't looking at the principal, wasn't looking at the audience, wasn't looking at his friends. He was looking toward the side aisle, toward Janet, toward the folder for half a second. That's it, half a second. But it was enough. Janet gave the tiniest nod. Michael nodded back, then faced forward. And suddenly every instinct I possessed started screaming, because whatever was about to happen had been planned long before this morning, long before the seat, long before the torn name card, long before Chloe walked into this building thinking she'd won. This wasn't a reaction. This was a countdown. And somewhere deep in my chest, beneath 18 years of exhaustion and sacrifice and restraint, something dangerous started to wake up. Hope. The really scary kind. The principal loved microphones. You know the type. Give them a podium and suddenly every sentence becomes a documentary narration. The future. The leaders of tomorrow. The journey ahead. The power of dreams. I wasn't listening. Sorry. I'm sure it was inspirational. Maybe somebody's grandmother got emotional. Maybe a bald eagle landed on the roof. No clue. Because my entire brain was locked onto Michael. Something was different. Not wrong. Just different. He looked calm. Way too calm. And calm Michael was dangerous. Panicked Michael made spreadsheets. Calm Michael changed outcomes. Huge difference. The music ended. Students settled. Programs rustled. A baby cried somewhere in the back. Every graduation in America apparently includes one confused infant, wondering why everyone is dressed like medieval accountants. Then names started. Awards. Scholarships. Academic honors. The usual parade. And every few minutes, another achievement attached itself to my son. National merit. Engineering distinction. Research fellowship. STEM leadership award. At one point, Claire leaned over. How many things did he win? I shrugged. No idea. I stopped counting. Honestly, by award number 6, I started feeling embarrassed. Not for Michael, for the rest of humanity. The kid was collecting achievements like Pokemon. Meanwhile, I felt accomplished. When I remembered to move laundry from the washer to the dryer before it developed its own civilization, life comes at you fast. The audience applauded, teachers smiled, parents beamed, and every time Michael crossed the stage, he remained exactly the same. Steady, focused, almost detached. Like somebody waiting for a train. Not somebody enjoying a celebration. Waiting. That word kept bothering me. Waiting for what? Then I noticed something else. His friends. The students sitting closest to him. They kept looking at him. Not constantly. Just enough. Tiny glances. Quick checks. Like people who knew a secret. And suddenly my pulse picked up again. Because I knew that look. Teenagers are terrible liars. Absolute garbage. They think they're subtle. They're not. A group of teenagers keeping a secret has all the stealth of a marching band falling downstairs. Something was coming. I didn't know what, but something. Then the principal stepped back to the microphone, and the entire room shifted. You could feel it. The moment every parent waits for. The big one. The valedictorian address. The final speech. The symbolic handoff. The academic victory lap. The thing students spend months preparing. The thing parents record. The thing relatives post with captions like, so proud. The thing that usually gets forgotten 3 days later. Except this one wasn't going to. Not even close. The principal smiled, introduced Michael, and suddenly 600 people exploded into applause. My knees almost gave out. No joke. Actually almost gave out. Because I hadn't known. Nobody told me. Not Claire. Not Janet. Not Michael. Nobody. My son. Valedictorian. I just stood there staring like an idiot, a complete idiot. Because suddenly every sacrifice hit me at once. Every overtime shift. Every bill. Every struggle. Every year. All crashing together. And for 1 second I couldn't breathe. Not from sadness. From shock. The good kind. The kind that sneaks up behind you. Michael stood. The applause got louder. And that's when something weird happened. David started looking around. Like he expected people to notice him. Not openly. Subtly. But I caught it. That little chest puff. That little smile, that tiny look people get when they want reflected glory. And honestly, I almost laughed because life has a wicked sense of humor. The man contributed approximately 3% to the group project and somehow wanted executive producer credit. Amazing. No notes. Michael walked toward the podium. The room settled. Phones rose. Hundreds of screens glowing. Ready to capture the moment. Ready for another graduation speech. Another collection of inspiring cliches. Another safe memory. Nobody knew they were about to witness a controlled demolition. Including me. Especially me. Michael reached the microphone. Adjusted it slightly. Pulled a folded speech from his pocket. Standard stuff. Normal. Expected. The audience relaxed. I relaxed. The tension faded for exactly 5 seconds. Then Michael stared at the pages and didn't speak. 5 more seconds. Nothing. 10 seconds. Still nothing. The silence started growing teeth. People shifted in their seats. Teachers exchanged glances. The principal tilted his head. Then Michael folded the speech. Once. Twice. Carefully, like he was putting something away forever, and slid it back into his pocket. My stomach dropped. Immediately. No hesitation. Straight to the floor. Because I knew that move. That was not nerves. That was a decision. A deliberate one. The kind Michael never made lightly. The auditorium became painfully quiet. Not normal quiet. Pressure cooker quiet. The kind where every tiny sound suddenly becomes loud. A cough. A chair squeak. A program page turning. Then Michael finally looked up and smiled. Not a happy smile. Not an angry smile. A resolved smile. Which is somehow scarier than both. Because happy people can be persuaded. Angry people can be redirected. Resolved people, good luck. The kid had made peace with whatever came next, and that terrified me. Not because I thought he'd fail, because I realized he wasn't afraid at all. I suddenly remembered him at 13, middle school science competition. One judge accused him of plagiarism because his project was too advanced. Michael calmly opened his notebook, produced 6 months of research logs, then politely dismantled the accusation point by point. No yelling, no drama, just facts. The judge looked like he'd been hit by a truck. That same expression was on Michael's face now. Polite certainty, the deadliest kind. Because emotion burns out. Certainty doesn't. The room waited. Michael rested both hands on the podium, took one breath, and looked somewhere behind the crowd, not at me, past me, toward the exit doors, toward daylight, toward whatever future came after this room. Then he finally spoke. The first sentence wasn't dramatic, wasn't loud, wasn't theatrical. It was calm. So calm it made every hair on my arms stand up. I learned something important this year. That's it. One sentence. Simple. Clean. The audience leaned forward. Every single person. Instinctively. Like they felt something shifting underneath them. I learned, he continued, that success isn't built by the people who take credit. The room got quieter, which shouldn't have been possible. But somehow it did. It gets built by the people nobody notices. And suddenly I understood. Not the whole plan. Not even close. But enough. This wasn't about revenge. That realization hit me like cold water. Whatever Michael had prepared, it wasn't revenge. It was correction. A very different thing. Revenge says, look what happened to me. Correction says, look what actually happened. One is emotion. The other is truth. And truth doesn't need volume. It just needs timing. I watched my son standing on that stage, tall, steady, certain. And for the first time all morning, something unexpected happened. I stopped worrying. Completely. The fear vanished. Gone. Because I finally understood something that should have been obvious. This wasn't my moment anymore. It hadn't been for a long time. The little boy I'd spent 18 years protecting was gone. Not in a sad way. In a successful way. He'd become somebody capable of protecting himself. Somebody capable of standing in front of 600 people and saying exactly what needed to be said. No more. No less. And as Michael looked out across that auditorium, preparing to continue, I realized the next few minutes were going to change more than a graduation. They were going to change the story everybody had been telling themselves, especially the people sitting in row B. The second Michael said that, I saw it happen. Not the reaction. The realization. Row B finally understood they weren't controlling the day anymore. David stopped smiling. Chloe stopped moving. And 600 people suddenly became very interested. Michael looked down at the podium, reached under it, pulled out a thin black folder. My stomach flipped, because I recognized it immediately. Janet's folder, well, a copy of it. Oh dear God. I almost started laughing, not because it was funny, because Chloe had spent 2 years treating every situation like content, and now she was about to become content. The universe has a mean streak sometimes. Michael opened the folder, not dramatically, just calmly, like a kid presenting a science project, which somehow made it worse. Way worse. I wasn't planning to talk about this today, he said. The auditorium stayed silent. I was planning to talk about college. A few nervous laughs. Nobody relaxed. I changed my mind. Then he held up a single sheet of paper. 1 page, not 20, not 50. 1, that's all he needed. Over the last 2 years, multiple attempts were made to interfere with my education, my communication with my mother, and school events. Chloe's face drained, completely, gone, like somebody unplugged her. Michael wasn't emotional. That was the killer. If he'd been angry, people would have dismissed it. Teenager drama, family issues, whatever. But he sounded like he was reading weather reports. Cold. Precise. Finished caring. The school already has copies. He nodded toward Dr. Reyes. The district attorney has copies. Another ripple through the audience. Small. Dangerous. The attorney representing my mother has copies. Janet didn't move, didn't smile, didn't blink. Absolute assassin behavior. Then Michael closed the folder. Done. That was it. No giant speech. No screaming. No public execution. Just facts. Simple facts. And somehow that landed harder than any rant ever could. Because everyone knew. The room knew. Teachers knew. Parents knew. David knew. Most importantly, Chloe knew. The story she'd been selling had just died. Publicly. Permanently. Michael took a breath. Looked around. Then finally looked at me. For real this time. Not past me. At me. And his expression softened. Immediately. The cold disappeared. The 18-year-old genius vanished. My kid came back. Just for a second. I only want to thank one person. My throat tightened. Nope. Not doing this. Not crying. Absolutely not. I had makeup on. Expensive mascara. By expensive, I mean $12. Which is expensive when you're me. His voice cracked slightly. Just once. My mom. That was it. Nothing fancy. Nothing rehearsed. Just my mom. The audience exploded. Instantly, people stood. Teachers stood. Students stood. Everybody. The noise hit the walls and bounced back. I couldn't hear anything. Couldn't think. Couldn't breathe. Michael smiled. A real smile. Finally. Then he adjusted his graduation cap. And that's when everyone noticed the writing. Big white letters, impossible to miss. Thanks, Mom. That's it. No quote, no slogan, no speech. Just 2 words. The shortest message he'd given all day. The strongest one, too. I laughed. Actually laughed, right there under the exit sign. Through tears I swore weren't happening. Across the room, Claire was crying hard enough to qualify as weather. David sat frozen. Chloe looked like she wanted the floor to open and swallow her whole. Honestly, fair. Michael accepted his diploma, shook hands, walked off stage. And just like that, it was over. Not the ceremony, the fight, the years of nonsense, the games, the little power plays. Done. Finished. Dead. 20 minutes later, graduates flooded the parking lot. Families everywhere. Pictures. Flowers. Chaos. Beautiful chaos. I barely made it outside before somebody slammed into me. Michael, still in his gown, still holding his diploma. He hugged me so hard my feet almost left the ground. And for a second, neither of us said anything. We didn't need to. Then he pulled back, grinning, finally looking like a teenager again. I wiped my eyes. You little menace. He laughed. Got that from me, unfortunately. Then I noticed something across the parking lot. David standing alone, just standing there, watching. No Chloe, no crowd, no audience, no spotlight, just him. For the first time in years, Michael followed my gaze, looked at his father, then looked back at me, and shrugged. That's all. A shrug, like he'd already moved on, like the decision had been made months ago. Maybe it had. Then he held up his diploma. Ready to go home? Home. Not Dad's house. Not anybody else's house. Home. The word hit harder than everything that happened inside that auditorium. I smiled. Yeah, baby. He wrapped an arm around my shoulders, and together we walked past Row B's problems, straight toward our future, without looking back.